Welcome to the reality of building a business. My name is Sonia Barlow, and this is the first time that we are doing a LinkedIn Live via my account, which is super exciting. I would like to introduce you to our panel guests today, Laura Rana and Francesca Baker, who I will allow to introduce themselves. We're going to have a really fruitful conversation for half an hour, so if you'd like to get involved via the chat function, please do. We'll be asking questions, leading the forum, and definitely get involved because it's important to know what the realities are of running a building a business, especially as a woman and remote working. So Laura, if I can invite you to introduce yourself first, and then Francesca, and then we can kick off.
Sure. Hi, thanks so much for having me. So my name's Laura Rana, and I'm launching a social enterprise, which is called Kushi Kanta, which translates as happy blanket in Bengali. And our mission is to create opportunities for mothers in Bangladesh to provide for their children with dignity and contribute to the circular economy. And we're doing that by making sustainable multi-purpose baby blankets. And the idea was inspired by the birth of my twin daughters, who are half British and half Bangladeshi, and my long-standing experience of working with struggling mums in Bangladesh and wanting to do something to support them.
That's all very wonderful and worthy. I am a copywriter and marketer and PR, so basically all sort of comms stuff. So I work with messages and connecting with people, and I work with a number of different organisations, sort of B2B, B2C, but I guess I tend to gravitate quite naturally towards arts and culture and charity and non-profit. So essentially the stuff that doesn't pay so well, but I love it, so it's okay.
I like the fact that you've raised it doesn't pay very well. Actually, for many people who work in not-for-profits and charities, I think the perception is that eventually it will start paying, but most people do it for good and for best practice, just to help society and environment. And ironically, the LMF network itself is a not-for-profit, and I was sent a request to be someone's charity partner for a large corporate about 2 months ago, and one of the criteria was you have to have a minimum of 100k in the bank. And I thought, who has 100k in the bank as a charity or not?
Yeah, exactly. Especially starting out. Yeah, it's just crazy.
Absolutely.
And that's why you need this corporate partnership, surely. Like, if they're already going out to charities who have plenty of money, they're sort of missing a trick there.
Absolutely. And I think given that it's Mental Health Awareness Month, Awareness Week, Awareness Day, I really want to think about and discuss at least, funding as founders. Very difficult, especially when you're starting a new business. Where does this income come from? Where, are you using your savings? What is the reality? And I know, Laura, that you've just finished or you're currently finishing crowdfunding campaign. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thanks. So I've been self-funding to date, but I'm really conscious of, paying double nursery fees in London are even more crazily expensive than I thought they were going to be. So I'm also, doing paid work. I'm freelance in the international development and humanitarian sector, and my background's in impact measurement. So I've been doing this, kind of nap times, evenings, and everything. And I have been looking at some grants and things, but again, there's a lot of funding actually out there, particularly for social enterprise at the moment. But what I'm doing doesn't quite tick the boxes for various reasons. And I guess also I'm really conscious that I wanted to test the demand, like the market demand, as soon as possible, both in terms of it being, viable for me to be like pouring my time and my energy and my heart into this, if people don't actually want to buy the products. But also in terms of the mothers I'm partnering with in Bangladesh, like the last thing I want to do is kind of set up expectations that I'm not going to be able to meet if people don't want to buy the blanket. So crowdfunding is a really good way to get the funds that we need to get started, because I've already invested a bit more than I can afford, but also to actually test whether there's a market and, kind of build up like a supportive community. And I think it does so much more than just get the money, basically, which is what everybody told me. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster, but a really exciting and ultimately successful one so far. So
that's really good. And it must be super hard juggling it, obviously being a parent, it's to kind of young kids, and also, like you said, having freelancing gigs. But the one thing that I really want to touch on is, you said, kind of access to grants and funds are very difficult. And it was a social enterprise. Personally, us through the LMF network, we have been rejected 3 times in the last 12 months for the same grant with no feedback, with no understanding as to why. And it's taken us 12 months to raise 9k, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but 9k covers all the technical costs and software. because it's expensive to even have Zoom or StreamYard, which is what we're using, to reach people. And have you found that it's difficult for you when it comes to kind of, balancing, I guess, grant applications, running the crowdfunding scheme, and then just managing your life?
I think a little. I guess there's two things there. There's one about kind of the funding and again, like the time and energy you spend, for example, in a grant application compared to everybody said with crowdfunding, like it's not easy money. It would almost be easier for me to work those hours in a freelance capacity and take the money I earn from that to put into Cushy Canter. But as I said, it's kind of more than that. But I guess in terms of kind of the juggling of everything, I mean, you get used to it. I've also feel I'm really lucky, like over the last year, to have had something that I'm really passionate about and to have had something to do, that I think there's a lot of people who've been sitting around kind of frustrated about the things that we can't do. So it's been brilliant to, have something to kind of put my time and my energy and kind of use my brain that's not just changing nappies and, all the kind of like the cliche mum things that are brilliant. But yeah, obviously, it's nice to have something aside from that.
Absolutely. And what about yourself, Francesca? How has it been during, especially the pandemic, as a small business owner, kind of raising funds, gaining funds, and, I guess crudely selling yourself online?
So actually this year has been my best year yet. So I started 4 years ago, and my sort of income has quadrupled in that time. So it's gone very well. But I think what I have found harder is like, it's not necessarily sort of selling myself, but the sort of managing my workload. Like the thing about sort of freelancing, running your own business, is you're always like, oh, what if this is the last job I ever get, and then I'll be destitute. So that sort of element of like, I do have a habit of sort of taking too much on. And this morning I turned down a very interesting, very well paid job because I was like, I literally don't have time to do this. And it was kind of it would just stress me out with too much for my sort of well-being. And the whole reason I started my own business was because I wanted to look after my well-being. So there's no point if it doesn't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you mind going into that slightly a little bit more? Because, as before we started the session, we definitely had a really quick conversation around, given that it's Mental Health Awareness Week, many of us as founders focus on the negative, or those who are looking to build a startup thinking the long hours or the difficult times, which definitely do exist. But you do have a lot more freedom when it comes to your hours, your schedules, the clients that you say yes to, and how that affects your mental health and well-being in general lifestyle.
I'm 34 and I've had anorexia since I was sort of 18, 19. And I've been like in and out of hospital for very long stints and have never recovered. I'm sort of stable at the moment, but I'm certainly not better, and I'm certainly not like a healthy weight. I don't eat properly, all that kind of stuff. But I was working kind of in agencies in London, and about 4 years ago, I got very, very sick. I was literally dying. I was about to be sectioned, and I was like, okay, but I don't want to go into hospital. I don't want to be sectioned. I will leave work. I will leave London. I'll move back to mum and dad's, and they can look after me. So I did that, and so it's like just for my 30th birthday, and I was distraught. I was like, this is such a failure. This is not what you do, and you're kind of turning 30. I should have done this wonderful stuff with my life. And I just started doing like bits of freelance stuff, like from my parents' sofa, because it was sort of something to do. And I remember like my first freelance job, I spent literally hours on it for like 100 quid or something. It was like days, weeks I spent on this job. And yeah, it's just built up from there. But I think what's really key for me is like, so I don't have a long commute anymore. So obviously, because that boosts burn energy. Like my meal times, like in my diary, no one can put, and I'm in control of my diary. There's not people like dropping meetings in here and there. There's none of the diet talk around the office, which I think is just kind of insidious and really damaging. If I choose to work a late night, then I'll probably take like a Friday afternoon off or something. So my schedule is entirely up to me rather than someone else's kind of demands and priorities and sort of urgent requests that are never actually urgent anyway. So all of those things. And yeah, so for me, like running my own business has just transformed my well-being. As I say, like I'm not recovered, I'm not perfect, but I'm so much healthier than I was, so much happier, crucially.
And thank you so much for sharing. That's such a vulnerable story. And I just want to say thanks for sharing, because it can't be easy. I mean, I equally left the corporate world for a really similar or same, not same reason by any means, but similar. And I think though I work long hours and I definitely, sometimes work the odd weekends, like you've said, the reality is it's your own business. And so if you work a long weekend, you can take off the next day. As a great example being yesterday afternoon, I was able to take it off and kind of say to my team, I'm going to take time off to be with my family and you carry on doing the work you want to do. But in the same regard, when my team come through and say, look, we're busy, we're tired, we're having a birthday celebration, I'm like, okay, we'll take the whole day off. Like, don't be at work. It's fine. Work isn't running away. But I think if anything, the pandemic's taught us is the rest of our life kind of is, right? We were, I don't know about you, you were commuting like 3 hours a day, working 8 hours a day, 11 hours a day.
Oh my God, yeah. At 3 hours a day, it's 15 hours a week. That's 2 full days. Absolutely. It's just absolutely crazy.
Absolutely. And Laura, what about yourself? How has it been working from home? Was it a difficult adjustment? And what I mean by that is, in the beginning, I know everyone was looking for, a great background and a place to work, and everyone was kind of getting ready. And now we're just, we spoke about this, we're just on our sofa having a chat and it's fine.
I think it definitely meant people were more understanding about the fact that I had 2 babies quite often kind of appearing. And I mean, now I guess as time's gone on and things have, people managing things a bit better, and especially with being freelance, then it was that thing of when are you earning enough money to be able to kind of justify the childcare. So yeah, there was a bit of that juggling, but it was kind of everybody's in the same boat, which was brilliant.
Oh God, I'm in awe. Like I'm in awe of parents at the best of times, let alone like during a pandemic when you're like homeschooling and stuff. It's just incredible.
Absolutely.
Well, my girls are only 1, so luckily I didn't have to do that. But yeah, no, that's okay. I've got friends, that's kind of next level. But yeah.
Absolutely. And I myself am not a parent, but I do about 10 to 15 workshops a week. And I think that's, quite a large number, and most of them you're facilitating. And the point I'm trying to make is there are so many more instances where you just have kids coming on or like pets coming on, and you're normalizing that, being like, it's cool, they can join in. It's fine if you need to take a break, just, feed them whilst you're listening in. Whereas I think 2 or 3 years ago, that would have been super taboo. Like I remember that BBC News clip where, the man was doing the interview and his wife and his kids ran in, and we, the internet was like, that's his nanny. And also it was like, it's super unprofessional, but that's life.
Someone I was on a call with, and she was like, oh, I'm so sorry, like my kids just like run in the room. And I was like, oh, honestly, like sometimes my boyfriend like comes in, brings me a cup of coffee, brings me a snack, gives me a kiss, and I'm like, I'm on a call. And they were like, get over it. Like honestly, that's my problems.
We've actually had a question come in, so if it's okay, I would like to ask that. So this is directed to Francesca. Amma says, and if I mispronounce your name, I'm super sorry to everyone who's listening. Francesca, thank you for sharing your story. What are the tools you're using to help your recovery? Do you have any advice for people in similar situations? So of course, you don't have to go into the depths if you don't want to, but if there's any top line tips, that would be great.
So like I say, like, if I sort of bring it back to that sort of slightly business context, in my diary every day is like my breakfast time, my morning snack, lunch, afternoon snack, blah, blah, blah. That's all in there. That's marked out. That is my time to do that. Doing like a weekly shop. So like the food is in the fridge. So when I was obviously working like in London, it would be like I'd go to Pret and have a meltdown and I couldn't decide. So now like that is in the fridge. I live with my boyfriend, and like for some meals we eat different food, but we try to make sure we have a few meals and like a few dinners together each week. And I always try to make those like stretching food, so like never anything that feels too safe or too alarming, but that is like beyond what I might kind of usually reach for myself, so stuff to stretch me. But I honestly think like the best, I've had like so much therapy and so many interventions, but just being happier. Like it's so weird when first like lockdown started, because I used to be like out every night, always doing something, always busy. And I was like, God, I'm never going to cope with this. Like my entire social life's going to like fall apart. But actually, I've just found it so much more relaxing than I thought. And I'm quite anxious about stuff sort of starting up again, and that sort of pressure to be out and be doing and be busy. So one of the things I think that's really helped is just like downtime and being like, it's okay to not be productive all the time. It's okay to not be busy. Like relaxing is actually good for me.
I think it's such a healthy comment that you've made, and thank you so much for sharing your story that it's okay to have downtime and not to be super productive. I found myself, especially as a small business owner, as a new business owner, doing a lot of social comparison. So
Yeah.
you see a lot of like success stories. You see a lot of people smashing it. Like even Laura, when I saw her crowdfunding campaign, a part of me was like, okay, well, it's worked for you, but last year we tried to do something similar for mentoring program and it didn't work. And you can't help but feel a little bit.
Definitely. And when Laura was telling her story about like what she does, I'm like, oh, she's a better person than me, because like
well, to be honest, I was going to pull the plug on the crowdfunding campaign a couple of weeks ago, because I was like, it's a total disaster. Kind of the people I knew had donated, and we got to about £4,000, and I was like, why am I even doing this? So yeah, and obviously, Francesca, with you sharing your incredible story as well, like it's so inspiring. So I would say totally the opposite. I think you can endlessly compare in terms of what people have been through, like what they've achieved, and so
absolutely. And if we take it back to kind of that mental health perspective, it's not healthy, because if we just consider the conversation now, I'm looking at Laura thinking, wow, that crowdfunding campaign. We're looking at Francesca thinking, wow, actually you've got such a great story. But what are we doing to actually notify our own successes, right? The big wins, the small wins. Like what do we do as people? And unfortunately, especially towards women, there's a lot of data out there to say women are all imposters. Like we should all feel like imposters. We should all feel like we're not good enough, or we need to do more. And actually the stats tell us that, 66% of women feel like imposters. And for those who don't know imposter syndrome, it's you feel like a fraud. You feel like you're not good enough, like you're not meant to be in that space. But I have to admit that in the last year, as I've started running my own business, I don't really feel like an imposter anymore. Maybe the odd few times, but I feel more like, do you know what? I deserve this space and I'm meant to be here. And just the fact that I'm doing this and it's completely out of my comfort zone is a win for me, right? Like this is my Friday win, is showing up online and just having a conversation about something which is really topical, because I've been trying to do this for the last 9 months. And what people don't realize is it's, as much as I can publicly speak, I've been trying to do a LinkedIn Live for 9 months, and every time I've hesitated. So this time around, I was like, I'm just going to make a Calendly link. People are going to book in and I'm not going to let them down. That's what kind of forced me to do what we're doing. And even to Francesca's point, in the last few weeks, I've woken up every day and did like 3 minutes of breathing exercises, because I fidget a lot. I can't meditate. I can't do the 20, 30 minutes that people do online. So it's what can you do in your version and what's your measure of success? So I guess my question therefore coming out is two-part. One is, do you feel like an imposter? And if so, what does that mean for you? And two is, how do you combat that feeling? And if I direct it to Laura first and then to Francesca, if that's okay.
I guess 100%. I don't have a clue what I'm doing in like so many ways. Like I'm not from a business background at all. I'm not from a textiles background, but I guess it's just believing in what you do. And I've spent kind of 14 years in the non-for-profit sector and worked all over the world. I've worked with some brilliant organizations, some brilliant people, but also in terms of like long-term sustainable kind of changing people's lives from an economic perspective, kind of lifting households out of poverty. I've seen an awful lot of money being thrown, if that's the right word, at those kind of initiatives, and then seeing, maybe there's some of the lack of sustainable impacts, and just thinking, actually, I've got an idea for how I can do things differently. It's like, doing something like this is totally out of my comfort zone. Even in like internal meetings and stuff in my job, I would be really shy about, although I'm quite gobby, like in my personal life, I'd be so shy about speaking, and networking is all like really awkward and everything. But I think once you're doing something you're really passionate about, it feels a bit more natural, and you're like, well, I've got to do this. You've got to put yourself out there in order to kind of have the impact that you want to have. And then just finding a really supportive community as well. I'm not from the corporate sector. I guess from the charity sector, you maybe kind of assume it's going to be full of like people who, lovely people who want to change the world and like whatever. I don't know, I can use the word, but like there's bitches everywhere. I've had a couple. I haven't had anything maybe like the sort of the traumatic experiences you guys have had, but I've definitely had a couple of female bosses who've been real bullies and made things really unpleasant, and all the kind of impact that can have on like every area of your life. So it's been incredible actually meeting other social entrepreneurs, or women kind of at a similar stage or a bit further down the line, and how incredibly supportive people have been, kind of from a practical perspective, but just emotionally as well, and like this kind of community community vibe has been brilliant. So
absolutely. And I love the fact you've mentioned community so much. So Francesca, I'm going to come to you, but I'm just going to kind of flip the question slightly, because we've had a great question from Sarah. Sarah says, how hard is it as entrepreneurs to separate your self-worth from the success of your business? What are your tools to do so successfully? So we can answer the same questions or the discussion points we've been having, but maybe if we put that lens into it, it'll help those with some real action points.
Yeah, I think that's really challenging, because it is so much, your brand, your business, and you throw yourself in. I think, sort of coming back to, don't compare yourself to other people. So think about what your own messages of success are. What is it that you want to achieve? What's the impact that you want to have in the world, rather than kind of what you think everyone else should be doing or everyone else is suggesting for you. So trying to step away from that, setting yourself sort of small targets. So, I want to raise £100 in my crowdfunder this week, or, I want to, get this piece of copy signed off this week. So being quite focused. And once you've done that, you've achieved it. Like, you don't have to, become a 6-figure business that week. Like, you've just done something small and you kind of, tick something off. That was your goal. So just being, quite specific and quite realistic, I suppose, can help you sort of set those parameters. And also, like, just downtime, like, go for walks in the morning, or like have a couple of glasses of wine at the end of the day. Remember the things that you actually really enjoy doing, because it's not always about business, it's not always about work. So just trying to have that kind of separation.
Yeah, absolutely. Laura, do you have anything else to add? Anything that you deem as kind of success measures? Because as you've mentioned, you don't really have a business background. So how do you define the success of your business? Because fundamentally, you're also building your brand at the same time.
Yeah, well, I think Francesca's point about you saying something in terms of kind of overall being happier in terms of, kind of tools and how you're coping is really important in terms of thinking about separating like your life and then the business, or like the initiative you're trying to start, and kind of feeling there's life outside of it. So yeah, if it's, I guess with what I'm trying to do, I'm like, right, I've always wanted to do something like this. I've had this idea. I'm going to try my absolute hardest. I'm going to put as much into it as I can. And especially with the crowdfunder, it's like a really public, like if it fails, like, it's totally public kind of thing. But it's like, at least I can say I've tried as much as I can. And that there's, other things in life, that it's not like the be all and the end all.
Absolutely. And no, absolutely. And I just want to echo that, the fear that we have of failing, actually, we should be fearing the fact that we don't try. We don't know what's going to happen. And I always say about social media and online elements, be that your business, your brand, yourself, is you don't know who's watching, listening, or reading. Just because they're not engaging in that moment doesn't mean that they're not looking, they're not coming back to you. It means that they are watching, they are listening, they are reading, someone is absorbing it. And that when that time comes, they're going to come back to you and be like, actually, Laura said that, Francesca said this, Sonia does this. Let me loop them into the conversation. Let me see if we can do something for them. Let's see if, they are doing the work that they need to do. Here's what we can offer back. And, just to kind of end it on that point, I think when I separate the success of myself and my business is what is Sonia done for me? Like, what have I done for myself this week? What is my measure of success? My measure of success is making sure I go for a walk at least 15 minutes a day, making sure that when I'm having dinner, I don't have any technology near me and I just focus on having dinner, making sure when I wake up, I do 3 minutes of breathing because I can't do any more, but, minimum 3 minutes, making sure I remember to eat breakfast. I mean, it's crazy, but there was times where I don't remember to eat breakfast. You don't remember to have water. You don't remember to have lunch because you're so into making your business work that you actually forget your health comes really important.
And that comes back to what I was saying now, like, absolutely, my business runs around my health. Yes. So like lunch is in the diary and that is it. Like, and I do not have meetings over that time. And yeah, I think that's, and I go for a walk every morning and that is an absolute non-negotiable. And people say they need an early meeting. Well, I'm sure you really don't. You can probably wait till 9 o'clock. Like, yeah.
And you said non-negotiable, my meetings are limited to 15 minutes in the calendar. If you're trying to pick my brain, if that's the same as consultancy, I've got a different fee for that. Exactly. If you want, practice of my services, it's sending that across from a business perspective. So you really have to differentiate the person and the personality and the business and the brand from the two. Remind yourself that, I think somebody said it, I think it was yourself, Francesca, that you don't have to be an overnight success, but your measure of success is so different. And we're just going to touch on Ama's point, who said, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? So I believe it's a he. And he said, I've discussed this with my colleagues regarding imposter syndrome, especially as a practicing Muslim in commodity training. It can be very similar. You feel like you're out of place, you don't belong, etc., etc. I guess my kind of recommendation to just combating imposter syndrome in general is, one, identify what imposter syndrome means for you. I realized when I started working in the corporate world, I turned off all my social media because I was just work. That wasn't healthy. And right now, whilst I run my own business, I'm very much online. I'm like, that's not healthy either. So am I being an imposter syndrome, i.e. am I finding it hard to delegate? Am I too much in control? Am I feeling a certain way about myself? The second is to give yourself KPI. So again, going back to what we've discussed, what is the KPI for Sonia, i.e. for that week, health, wealth, wellness? What is it for the business and the brand? And the third and most important is just remembering that everything is a work in progress. You need to share your failures as much as your successes, because for me, failures come with, I've learned, I've tried, I've failed really fast. So how do I repeat again, but not make the same mistake? Our Instagram's been hacked, our website domain's been hacked. I have lost clients. I've, sent the wrong emails. I've sent emails when I shouldn't be sending emails. I've publicly made a fool of myself. Okay, I've done that. What have I learned from it? How can I move forward? And I think that the last point I'd like to make on that is, I think everyone deserves a first opportunity or first chance. So if someone doesn't understand you, your culture, your background, your personality, and you're trying to be more inclusive, it's about educating them, giving them the tools and resources. What that does not mean is that the person going through the scenario is the only person that you lean on and you come with your question. What it means is you provide them with tools and resources so someone can go do their own education. They come back with questions if they need clarification, right? It's not my place as a person of color to teach you what I may go through. It's not Francesca's kind of, place to teach yourself what someone with healthcare and kind of, wellness and well-being may go through. It's not Laura's perspective to be like, this is what every mother goes through. And, she's not the gatekeeper. And I think a lot of corporations get that wrong. Is the person who's living the experience, they place the onus on them. Like it's your responsibility to do that. I don't personally agree with that. And I think it very much is about taking a step back and understanding you're a work in progress. Everything is up for education, and evolution is such that we get a lot wrong so that we can get a lot more right. But I'm going to stop my kind of feelings around that. Laura, if I could invite you in, if that's okay. How do you deal with imposter syndrome? And then Francesca.
I think what you said in terms of figuring out what it means for you, and I guess, what are the things that really kind of push your buttons or make you feel uncomfortable or kind of like inferior, and then sort of unpacking that a little bit. And I mean, there's kind of the obvious things around, I'm trying to get my head around Instagram, for example, because I know it's really important. Like if you've got a product-based business and then you look like somebody else launched their Instagram at the same time and suddenly they've got 5,000 followers. And, even my mum's like laughing at me. She's like, Laura, why don't you have any followers, whatever. I was like, oh, cheers, mum. But then, and then when you kind of think, well, actually, what does that mean? And then I'm trying to understand about conversion and stuff, and I'm like, well, I might have 5,000 followers, but if none of them actually want to buy one of the blankets, okay, they can do a like on like cute pictures of my daughters in the blankets and whatever. But kind of going back to why you're doing what you're doing and what's actually like concretely going to take you there. And I guess in terms of what you're saying about kind of public failure or making a fool of yourself, it's like, what's the worst that can happen, and almost bring it on, because once I've done that, then it's like, okay, I've done that. I didn't die, like life goes on, and just kind of pick yourself up. So
absolutely,
yeah, I'm not sure I'm making much sense. I'm a bit of a waffler by nature, and I haven't slept all week. But my girls are poorly, so I've been up every hour, but. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear. Honestly, it makes a lot of sense. And I think this is the reason why I wanted to launch this kind of series of lives, is I just wanted the reality of what it really means and the actual like real conversations that people have. So they're not formalized, they're very raw. We haven't got any questions that we've come up with. It's a conversation so that people realize this is the truth of what it means to run a business, right? Francesca, if
and
you want
to. We're all, we are all people.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, we are all people, and business is part of that, but so are our families, our friends, our lives, our likes, our hobbies and stuff. So I think just sort of, making sure that we remember that. And that's why I think these conversations should be authentic and normal. And like I did a Twitter chat the other day, and everyone was like, oh, these are like, very left fields and sort of, kind of strange conversation, because I was asking about like personality and business and whether that matters. Because I think it does. I think kind of authenticity and sort of showing up and being who you are. Like, I just, when I get on client meetings and like, I am quite casual and I do swear sometimes, but I just want to like work with people who I connect with. And I think that makes it so much easier to run your own business, because you're not like on, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I love that. And if I can kind of summarize, from a diversity, inclusion and belonging perspective, the more authentic you are, the happier you are, the more productive you are, the better it is for your business. And if we loop it back to that statement of happiness, it's fundamentally we're all running businesses because we want to be happier, but also we want to do something that makes the people around us and the concepts around us happier, more productive, more profitable. And we're really focusing on our mental health and kind of care. So to summarize and to loop it up, what is the one tip that you want to give to people of the world, right? Be that founders or be that corporate people, and especially focusing on kind of the health and wellness perspective. One thing, if you could give in terms of advice, what would that be? It could be as simple as go for a walk every day, if you can. Go and grab some fresh air. Fail fast and fail hungry, or it could be, just remember to have a glass of water, because I think these are just simple advices that many of us forget. So if Laura, if you'd like to kind of kick off, and Francesca, if I can ask you to end, that would be amazing.
Well, it's not a very kind of snappy one, but I think just generally sort of going with the flow. Like, I'm really impatient by nature, and between like the girls and the social enterprise and work, you kind of have everything like really planned out to kind of juggle everything, which I think is all well and good. But some days when it's just not happening, then just to, like the other day, I think especially because the nursery fees are so expensive, then I'm like, I must be earning, more than the nursery, kind of every hour, every minute that the girls are in nursery, whatever, I've got to be earning money, blah, blah. And sometimes when it's just not happening, like the other day, I just went to pick them up and we went for a walk in the playground, and I was just like, I'm not achieving anything with this time, but it's kind of made me happy. It made them happy, and I'll pick up the to-do list tomorrow, kind of thing.
Yeah, thank you.
It's not very profound, but it was quite a big realization for me, because I don't normally do that kind of thing at all. I'm obsessed with like ticking everything off the list and go. So
I think you have to give yourself slightly more credit. Just on this conversation, you may not think it's profound, but honestly, a lot of people just need somebody else to say it's okay, and you're that person. And thank you so much for sharing everything. Francesca, what about yourself?
So we were talking about like raising money, but I think one of the best things I've done for like my mental health is spend it. So I used to be like, I'm gonna like transcribe this interview word for word, and now I just like whack it through Otter. Or I was like, oh, I can like do Zoom and then like come out after 40 minutes, then redo it. And I'm like, for £10 a month, like I might as well get the pro. So things like that, just like where things are going to save me time and energy. And I know that's a very privileged position to be in. I can afford to sort of spend money on stuff. But thinking about like, not when you spend money or time on something, like investing and what's the outcome for it, has really sort of helped me sort of be able to take a step back, but also get better results at the end.
Fab. Thank you so much. Thank you for a healthy half an hour discussion. Thank you for being my first guest, and for using this as a pilot MVP and a raw kind of real perspective of this could have gone totally wrong. This could have failed. People could have come in. We could have had a tech issue, but we tried nonetheless, and it worked. And we gave some real tips, and people are loving it. And I see all the great comments. So please do remember to follow Laura and follow Francesca and connect with me. We will be doing this every Friday. We are booked until December, which is really exciting, which just means we'll have a lot more conversations. And of course, we're going to keep in touch with both of you to see how you are progressing, how your business is progressing, and also how you as individuals are progressing, because, running a business is an evolution of a person as well. So I look forward to catching up in 6 months or so, just to see how everything's going.
Fantastic.
Thanks so much. It was really lovely to meet you both and have a lovely chat.